Stafford got the exact same vote distribution as
Yes.
Lamar. 4 tier 1 votes, 38 tier 2 votes, 8 tier 3 votes. And so obviously it's been a very Matthew Stafford centric offseason. He owned the early part of the news cycle with the trade. And when you look at some of the quarterback rankings that have come out over the last couple months, he's like in the top 5 in some of these by virtue of just changing teams. I will say he's a tiny bit higher in the rankings for you this year, but the vote distribution is pretty much the same that it was last year. He seems to be one of those guys that the league has always valued a little bit higher than the general public solely because of how talented he is.
No doubt. Traits-based. Like all the offensive guys in the league, they just want, man, I wish I could work with them. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's sort of like, if you're a car guy and you've got a Camaro in your garage, but the guy across the street has a Ferrari, you're like, oh, dude, man, if I could drive that Ferrari, I mean, it can.
The Camaro's nice, but man, one more notch would be great.
One more notch, because I am so good, I can get the most out of this thing. This guy isn't even doing it right. I mean, you can't.
It's sitting in the garage the whole time.
Yeah, you can't put a turbo on that thing. Whatever. So, Stafford is liked, not loved. I mean, I think everyone agrees that. Look, if he was truly a tier 1 quarterback, they would have won a playoff game during that time just because of the sheer will of it. But the other hand of it, I'm just looking at here. He's had the highest they've ranked on defense and special teams for EPA in his entire career. He's had 3 seasons when he was the primary starter where they've ranked in the top half of the league. Okay. And they won 9, 10, and 11 games. The rest of the time they ranked between 17 and 32. And the average was 26. So it's been unusually bad around him. He's had to overcome more from a winning standpoint. And I think people are now thinking, okay, you're going to go and have a better defense with you, and you're going to maybe win a playoff game. Now, that said, I believe, there's a great quote in the piece. What the Rams did is like firing your coach after you go 8-8. You better go 9-7. They won a playoff game last year.
I know.
That's a really high bar. So are they going to advance and further with Stafford this year? I don't know. How much would you want to bet?
I think their offense will be better. I think their offense will be significantly better and significantly more dynamic at the very least.
I agree.
Watching their offense, and we talked about this a little bit with Lindsay yesterday, but bringing in Kevin Carberry from Stanford, I think their running game will look a lot different. I think there'll be more gap scheme runs. I think it'll be more diverse. The amount of speed they added this offseason feels like a declaration of intent. It's like, we know that we were not explosive or aggressive enough over the last 2 years. We need that aspect back to our offense. I think that you're going to see a different version of what they are, and I think that it's going to be successful by virtue of that increased aggression and that explosive element that they've lacked over the last couple seasons. I don't necessarily think their team's success will be better, though, because their defense last year was the best in the league comfortably, and that is not going to happen this year.
And their guy left. Brandon Staley left. He did a great job.
Even if he was back, I still don't think it would happen. Just by virtue of math and what we've seen in history, it's very, very hard to sustain that level of success defensively. Now, you lose Brandon Staley, you lose John Johnson, you lose Troy Hill. These are not the most important players on that defense, but it still is a lesser unit than it was at the end of last season in a bunch of different ways. Yeah. So I think they may be a similar team in terms of success with their record, how far they get in the playoffs, all that, even if their offense to me looks a lot different and is significantly better.
What if Detroit had a better offensive line than the Rams, and here Stafford is finally with the Rams? I mean, I think they can scheme around that. I'm kind of kidding, but I love the move. I mean, I just selfishly, we want to see Stafford in a different element, and with quote unquote better coaching and better stuff around him. And this removes some of those excuses that aren't, I mean, they're reasons as much as they're excuses, but
I tend to think that there's a little bit of projection with Stafford in this exercise every year, but especially this year, because if you look at his rankings early in his career, or early in this exercise, 14, 15, he was like 12th or 13th. And over the last couple of years, he's firmly in the top 10, which there's not really a reason for that. Like he played much better in 2019,
but it's
reason. Still.
Here's the reason.
Okay, what do you think the reason is?
Here's the reason. Drew Brees retires.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's
Rivers
fair.
Retires, and Roethlisberger goes to tier 3. So those are the 3 guys that would be ahead of him.
You're right.
for the
You're
last
right.
10
That's
years.
a good point.
And so if they're in there, he's 10th instead of 7th or whatever he is, he's 7th, right? He's tied with Lamar, right?
Yes. He's 7th.
He's
yes.
7th tied with Lamar. So that's sort of what happened is some of our higher tier 2 guys are gone, and that
makes sense.
Move up the ranking without really being seen totally differently. But he certainly didn't fall,